Okay, there.
Okay.
And we're just 1 minute over, so let's.
It's a hybrid thing. So
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to ULT San Diego for the Aquarian series. This afternoon, the title of the presentation is Impermeability, and that's going to be given to us by Laura Gray, and our chairperson for today is Desiree Van Sanen. So, a reading before we begin. From the voice of the silence. Be of good cheer, O daring pilgrim, to the other shore. Heed not the whisperings of Mara's hosts. Wave off the tempters, those ill-natured sprites, the jealous Lamayin in endless space. Hold firm, thou nearest now the middle portal, the gate of woe with its 10,000 snares. Have mastery over thy thoughts, O striver for perfection, if thou wouldst cross its threshold. Have mastery over thy soul, O seeker after truths undying, if thou wouldst reach the goal. Thy soul gaze center on the one pure light, the light that is free from affection, and use thy golden key. The dreary task is done, thy labor well nigh o'er. The wide abyss that gaped to swallow thee is almost spanned. Thou hast now crossed the moat that circles round the gate of human passions. Thou hast now conquered Mara and his furious host. Thou hast removed pollution from thine heart and bled it from impure desire. But, O thou glorious combatant, thy task is not yet done. Build high, Lanu, the wall that shall hedge in the holy isle, the dam that will protect thy mind from pride and satisfaction at thoughts of the great feat achieved. A sense of pride would mar the work. I build it strong, lest the fierce rush of battling waves that mount and beat its shore from out the great world Maya's ocean swallow up the pilgrim and the isle, yea, even when the victory's achieved. Thine isle is the deer, thy thoughts the hounds that weary and pursue his progress to the stream of life. Woe to the deer that is o'ertaken by the barking fiends before he reached the vale of refuge, Dhyana Marga, path of pure knowledge named. We give you our own Laura Gray.
Monica, it's interesting reading the verses from the voice of the silence. It's like they're green and verdant and so beautiful. And then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, we've got a job to do. We've got work to do. We just cannot bask in these wonderful poetic words and this beautiful prose, that we have to take up arms in this journey. And we see that from the very beginning. How many times do we read that without awareness, where it says, this book was written for those who are not aware of the dangers of the lower idi. It takes years, lifetimes, the whole Manvantara, and the voice of the silence gives us this journey of the whole Manvantara. And it's quite beautiful. So we come to the talk of impermeability. And the quote from Hermes is quite beautiful in this regard. Through daily meditation and calm reflection The individual must generate the energy needed to reverse the polarities of the vestures and refuse to function as a creature of circumstance. It will seem like we're dancing all around the word impermeability, but never really see it or understand it. The impermeable is who we are as the self. And the reason we cannot see it, the self, is because we are it. The only way to see anything is to separate ourselves from it and observe it. But the self is who we are. We can get close to it, but never touch it while on this earth or in any finite state. Our unity is the fact that it, the impermeable, is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The unknowable reality within which we live and move and have our being. We will consider the journey of all beings to reach that impermeable source, that each of us is on an obligatory pilgrimage, having once again begun this journey, moving through all the elemental kingdoms, through the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal expressions, to reach our current state as the individualized self. Monads, beings, must pass through all experiences in the changing world before returning to that source. In the Wadia study of the secret doctrine, we spoke of consciousness. Consciousness is whether there be anything to be conscious of or not. It is the ocean we live in, impermeable, changeless, boundless, and a center that is everywhere and nowhere. It is the causeless cause of all manifestation. In Volume 2 of the Secret Doctrine, it states that no being or entity can reach the state of absolute purity except through eons of suffering and the knowledge of evil as well as of good. The mind needs depth and breadth to draw it towards the diamond soul. We often miss our opportunities of karma and reincarnation if we do not, by self-effort, harmonize the forces within our nature to the self of all that lives. That is what Hermes is expressing by the idea of changing of polarities. That our opportunities that karma and reincarnation that come to us are opportunities of that work of changing the polarities, of living that higher life. For each of the vestures, our sevenfold principles, has a permanent and an impermanent aspect. HPB says the absolute is unknowable and impermeable on this earth plane. That is, that while on the plane of the finite, we cannot conceive of the infinite. The teachers say that to know the absolute with any awareness at all on our journey back requires us to work within our temporary conditions for the good of humanity and nature. This would bring about a harmony within our constitution. The knowledge of impermeability, or God, or whatever name we give it, cannot be known through words and symbols, but by and through the actions we perform every day. It is not necessary to be conscious of the progress one has made. We make a good deal of progress, says Mr. Judge, in our inner hidden life of which we are not at all conscious of. Often a realization or a lesson learned flashes upon us long after the event. This flash of insight is not lost, but becomes part of the fabric of our being. Sometimes we do not know of it until some later life. It is best, Mr. Judge says, to go on with the duty and refrain from trying to take stock and measure. To strengthen within ourselves the courage, knowledge, and wisdom to be in the world, but not of it. To use our vestures to work through rather than objects of sense gratification. The forms we occupy are to be used with a devotion to something other than our own desires. Impermeability, our talk today, synthesizes all the talks we've had this year. Will and desire, noetic psychology, vigilance and sloth, true sacrifice, deity and law, the cross, invulnerability, the therapy of the Buddha, humility and pride, noetic ethics, karma and choice, and patience and anger, all express something of this impermeability. These talks touch in a myriad ways the first words of the voice of the silence to discern the real from the unreal, the ever is from the ever becoming, the evolution of being. The voice of this silence speaks of two paths. It says, search for the path, Sola knew. Be of clean heart before thou startest on thy journey. Before thou takest, before thou takest thy first step, learn to discern the real from the false, the ever fleeting from the everlasting. Learn above all to separate head learning from soul wisdom, the eye from the heart doctrine. The seeds of wisdom cannot sprout and grow in airless space. To live and reap experience, the mind needs breadth and depth and points to draw it towards the diamond soul. Seek not those points in Maya's realm, but soar beyond illusion. Search the eternal and the changeless Sat, mistrusting fancy's false suggestions. That's from page 28 of The Voice. The diamond soul is the first and supreme Buddha, the eternal light. It has no beginning or no end. In the glossary, HPB states that Buddha means enlightened. To become a Buddha, one has to break through the bondage of sense and personality to acquire a complete perception of the real self and learn not to separate it from all other selves, to learn by experience the unreality of all phenomena of the visible cosmos, and to become impermeable to all that is evanescent and finite, and live while yet on earth in the immortal and everlasting. Sat is the one eternal and absolute reality and truth, the one ever-present reality in the infinite world, the divine essence which is, but cannot be said to exist, as it is absoluteness or beingness itself. One path is the liberation of oneself from the vestures. by leaving entirely the world of circumstances. This is not an easy task and involves living more and more in higher states of awareness and less in the world of form. The other path is even more difficult, for one chooses to stay in the world of circumstance. This requires us to tune our vestures with the intention to work with and for others. So instead of working our way out of these vestures, we actually work our way more deeply into them. Once we have realized the polarity within that was well illustrated in Catalina's talk, on noetic ethics, she was wonderful, that talk, and it helped us to see that polarity in the diagrams that she shared with us. We prepare our natures to let more and more of the higher principles work through the forms that we occupy. To become, as Robert Crosby says, constitutionally incapable of a selfish act. This is not something done in a day or a lifetime, but every moment becomes an opportunity to change the polarity of our thoughts and actions. This is the duty, the royal talisman, the magic of becoming for the whole of our humanity, whether we're aware of it or not. And as Mr. Judge says, if we were aware of this duty, life would be a contest of smiles. It is what we are about. We move from being tossed about in the ocean of many desires and attachments to temporary things to looking further out on the horizon and holding fast to living the universal life. This is not done by looking for big tests or big tasks to perform, but by paying attention to the karmic events that are put before us. Mr. Wadia stated in Living the Life, to assimilate in as full a measure as possible what we contact is a necessity of the spiritual life. Thus, the life of self-expression begins. When we get past the limitation of our perceptions, the subjective and objective become one. We lift ourselves up, changing the polarity of our vestures, and see the objective world not as an illusion, but as a reflection. Our current reflection does not express all that we are, and seeing ourselves as not the form or vestures, we can begin the process of self-analyzing and adjusting in each circumstance of karma that Mr. Wadia pointed our attention to. This is a necessity of spiritual life. The forms, not being true to our intentions, are altered as we, the perceiver, keep making changes within our reflection. As our awareness expands by degrees, we let go of the attachments that warp the expressions on the objective plane. We begin to love our enemies as much as our friends. We no longer kick at karmic conditions, but all are used to cheer us and to goad us further on our journey towards the impermeable. There is no divinity, save it has evolved as such from the one spirit. Every divine being is an evolution. Wherever divinity is spoken of, it means an evolution of being. All intelligence is based in the power to perceive, and that exists in every grade of being. And intelligence is the extension of the power to know. This idea sets aside a great many suggestions that we have perhaps depended upon. It would be well for us if we did not depend on anything save our own inherent power to learn, to extricate ourselves from the difficulties that surround us, to understand the doctrine of reincarnation and karma and the third fundamental of evolution. We need to understand impermeability. Everything given by the teachers throughout all ages is to help us to realize the impermeable side of all beings within every grade and form, to see the self in all and all in self. The one life impermeable to change, yet the cause of all change. To see the process taking place, the monad experiencing ever widening circles of awareness, yet ever remaining the changeless, impermeable monad. The monad enters no form or state of consciousness, but radiates through them all. From Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, page 244, we read, "A thorough familiarity with the occult faculties of everything existing in nature, visible as well as invisible, their mutual relations, attractions, and repulsions, the cause of these traced to the spiritual principle which pervades and animates all things. The ability to furnish the best conditions for this principle to manifest itself. In other words, a profound and exhaustive knowledge of natural law. This was and is the basis of magic." From the secret doctrine, it states, "No entity, whether angelic or human, can reach the state of nirvana or absolute purity except through eons of suffering and the knowledge of evil as well as of good, as otherwise the latter, or good, remains incomprehensible to us." So we see there the importance of manifestation to draw us towards that spiritual principle and to create the vestures, change the polarity of the vestures, as Hermes said, to better express that spiritual principle. There is a wonderful play called The King of the Dark Chamber by Rabindranath Tagore. And he opens his play with a wonderful little sentence. "You cannot cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water." It would be wonderful to see this on stage. Tagore's characters illustrate the pitfalls on this pilgrimage to the king's chamber. Often we think we have found the king in the temporary world around us. We cling to a flag or a book or some kind of thought form. We look for someone or something to lead us. Elton's talk on humility and pride spoke of the final task of the queen that the queen had to realize before she could enter the king's chamber. It was to give up pride. She could not enter the chamber without the garment of humility. And humility being the recognition that the king in the dark chamber is the self of all that lives. What we see in the changing world is the expression of consciousness. The play illustrates with clarity how foolish it is to deny the impermeable self or to give it any attributes. On our journey, we encounter many false kings of our own creation, thinking we have found the ultimate truth, only to discard it upon realizing how it limits us. The forms of body, mind, and feeling reflect the evolution that begins on the invisible side of our life. We turn now to the Buddha. He is seated under the Bodhi tree, looking contemplative and still. He is surrounded on all sides by Maya, or the changeable world, not unlike ourselves. He is surrounded with all the afflictions that assail the mind and sees the arrows of distraction all aimed in his direction. For while in a form, all of these things are ever present. But unmoved, Buddha sits within the fray and not taking any of the distractions as his own. He is able to hold fast, impermeable to the army of the voices. He acts from a place of compassion which dissolves all those sounds or makes them into one, as the voice of the silence says. To bring the finite mind closer to the infinite absolute, we need to embrace non-separateness and work for the benefit of all beings with no attachment or desire for reward or progress. Buddha understood the four modes of truth: knowledge of all misery, the conquering of illusion, the destruction of sin or separateness, and to enter the path of true knowledge. That knowledge is a state of faultless vision, samadhi. To become the light, the voice unbroken that resounds through all eternities, exempt from change, exempt from sin, the seven sounds in one. To accomplish the change of polarity, of the seven, to reflect the one. Om Tat Sat. Om as the eternal higher self. Tat, the removal of obstacles and attachments by the realization that we are that. And then Sat, the shining forth, the light of the Om, the higher self. From Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, we read, a thorough familiarity with the occult faculties of everything existing in nature, visible as well as invisible. Their mutual relations, attractions, and repulsions. The cause of these traced to the spiritual principle which pervades and animates all things. The ability to furnish the best conditions for this principle. To manifest itself, in other words, a profound and exhaustive knowledge of natural law. I think I've already read that, but I wanted to share it again because it's very much important to the idea of changing the polarity of the vestures that Hermes draws our attention to understand that every one of our principles on this plane has its counterpart in the invisible side of our nature, leading back to that one spiritual, impermeable principle. And Robert Crosby said, if we could always remember that the body, sense, and mind, brain are the steed or horse, and the self is the rider, the animal in us would have fewer opportunities to get the bit between its teeth. We are learning to ride, he says, and success does not come all at once. All the forces we use have their cause in the impenetrable side of cosmos, man, and nature. It is the one unity of all, And as drops in the ocean, each being contains the whole of that ocean. What is that drop? That impenetrable self. It is within that Upanishad statement that says, all beings are the same in kind and differ only in degree. What does this becoming look like? We have many descriptions and many indications of this journey, but that each drop or being must travel and is traveling, urged on by cycles, by karma and reincarnation or re-embodiment. The voice of the silence gives us to perish doomed is he who out of fear of Mara refrains from helping man lest he should act for self. Inaction based on selfish fear can bear but evil fruit. We must go through our appointed work. And that goes back to what Mr. Wadi has said about living that higher life. The Maya we live in is of our own creation, and it is only by following the wheel of life, duty, race, kin, to friend and foe, forgetting all our likes and dislikes, that we can take the matter of our forms and lift it to a truer and greater instrument for our higher principles to act through. At each step, regardless of our conditions, we always have the power to be aware of the beings around us and to act for them. This is what all the great teachers are doing. And we too can join the task to the degree that we are capable of. We can be of good cheer and pay attention to the karmic forces that come our way. We can slowly and surely, not missing a single step, lift up ourselves and the whole of nature and humanity. There is no hurry, just a slow and constant effort. The light on the path shares with us that nothing not of the eternal, can aid us in the understanding of the impermeable side of our nature and ourselves. This means becoming aware of a process that is taking place, desiring only that which is within you, desire only that which is beyond you, and as the light on the path says, desire only that which is unattainable. For within is the light of the world, the only light that can be shed on the path. That light that we are comes visible through to us through selfless service. It is useless to look for it anywhere but in the courage and fortitude and strength that's within us all. It is beyond us because when you reach it, you've lost yourself. It is unattainable because it forever recedes, and we can enter the light, but we can never touch the flame. The absolute is not to be defined, and no mortal or immortal has ever seen or comprehended it during the periods of existence. The mutable cannot know the immutable, nor can that which lives perceive absolute life. That's from The Secret Doctrine, page 34. All compounds are perishable, were the last words uttered by the lips of the dying Gautama when preparing under the sal tree to enter into nirvana. Spirit is the sole, elementary, and primordial unity, and each of its rays is immortal, infinite, and indestructible. From the Isis Unveiled, Volume 2. We can look at the diagram on page 200 of The Secret Doctrine as a process of the one life through many cycles, invisibly and silently within the 7 planes of consciousness and all those vibrations. that make up the manifested world of Globe D. In many places, theosophy indicates that all the forms exist for the soul's sake, and that each new incarnation, re-embodiment, or manvantara picks up what was gained in previous cycles. The three fundamentals of theosophy, unity, the law of cycles, karma and reincarnation, and evolution, all point to the impermeable self, that which has no beginning and no end and is beyond all change. The mind, too, the principle that we are most involved with now, other than the desire principle, the thinking principle, is an instrument used by the soul in gaining experience, just the same way as an astronomer uses his telescope for acquiring information about space. And we all know that the mind gathers dust and needs to be cleansed and purified, just like a telescope. Patanjali points out the importance of concentration and how the mind has the tendency to become modified by any object or subject brought before it. So we, by effort and concentration, must isolate the soul from those modifications. Page 422 again of The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, takes us into a deeper dive into seeing the esoteric side of the Greek myths. So we can look at this from the point of view of the Greek myths and understanding the impermeable and what has happened to prevent us from seeing that journey. The modern Prometheus, says The Secret Doctrine, has now become Epimetheus, he who sees only after the event. And we definitely see this in our life, that we learn our lessons after the universe shares the effect with us. Because the universal philanthropy of Prometheus has long degenerated into the selfish and self-adoration of Epimetheus, man will re-become the free Titan of old, but not before cyclic evolution has re-established the broken harmony between the two natures. That takes us back again to changing the polarity of the vestures in the opening statement from Hermes. We have to re-establish the broken harmony between the terrestrial and the divine, after which the Titan becomes impermeable to the lower titanic forces, invulnerable in his personality, and immortal in his individuality, which cannot happen before every animal element is eliminated from his nature. As we need an instrument to work through, and this instrument, the removing of the animal element, is the raising up of that matter. So it's not just about removing the animal element, it's about changing its polarity so that the animal becomes something that does not seek its self-gratification, but becomes a vehicle for the reflection of the higher. The Secret Doctrine further states the superior host was an exile from heaven who had got entangled in the meshes of matter. They, the inferior hosts, were masters of all the cosmic and lower titanic forces. The higher Titan possessed only the intellectual and the spiritual fire. This drama of the struggle of Prometheus with the Olympic tyrant and despot, the sensuous Zeus, one sees enacted daily within our humanity. The lower passions chain the higher aspirations to the rock of matter, to generate in many a case the vultures of sorrow, pain, and repentance. In each and every case, one sees this once more. The divine Titan is moved by altruism, but the mortal man is moved by selfishness and egotism in every instance. This is the way that lays us on our journey. We get caught in the eddies of the stream for moments and sometimes for lifetimes and fail to keep to the open road. To close our talk for today, the Bhagavad Gita tells us what an understanding of the impermeability of our nature looks like. How it manifests on this globe deep. The devotion to the self of all and the importance of living the life. My devotee, says the Bhagavad Gita, who is free from enmity, well disposed towards all creatures, merciful, wholly exempt from pride and selfishness, the same in pain and pleasure, patient of wrongs, contented, constantly devout, self-governed, firm in resolve, and whose mind and heart are fixed on me alone, is dear unto me. He is also my beloved, of whom mankind is not afraid, and who has no fear of man, who is free from joy, from despondency, and dread of harm. My devotee who is unexpecting, not peering about, pure, just, impartial, devoid of fear, and who hath forsaken interest in the results of action is dear unto me. He also is worthy of my love, who neither rejoiceth nor findeth fault, who neither lamenteth nor coveteth, and being my servant, hath forsaken interest in both good and evil result. He is also my beloved servant, who is equal-minded to friend and foe, the same in honor and dishonor, in cold and heat, and pain and pleasure, and is unsolicitous about the events of things, and to whom praise and blame are as one, who is of little speech, content with whatever cometh to pass, who hath no fixed habitation, and whose heart full of devotion is firmly fixed. But those who seek this sacred ambrosia, the religion of immortality, even as I have explained it, full of faith, intent on me above all others, and united to devotion, are my most beloved. What is written in the devotional text of the Bhagavad Gita, the voice of the silence, the Tao Te Ching, and many others, are words to help us. But until we take the position within ourselves and ask, who am I in relationship to all the changes that manifest within and surround us, we can miss the deeper meanings. This is a posture of Raja Yoga. Another posture is that of service. And the third and most important mental posture is to hold non-separateness, unity with all that lives, visible and invisible. Robert Crosby says, God is not an outside God, but is to be sought in the very innermost recesses of our nature, in the silent chamber, in the temple within us, and nowhere else. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Wow, that was beautiful. I especially love the way you knit together so beautifully all of those citations from those literary works that we hold in such high esteem. And you just give it so much respect and attention. I have to wonder, we are not able to see, you said something about we're not able to ever know the absolute
On this plane,
on this plane, and but I wanted to take it a little further. Does that mean we know it on another plane? Because if we're talking about unconditional, which is what it is, on any plane would be a state, and a state is conditional.
yeah,
I was
that's a
wondering if that's even a possibility, because on that state, it can even be a state of unconditional, because that's kind of a contradiction in terms. But if you're absorbed in that without naming what that is, are you ever aware of it?
it's a student gave me a quote from the beginning of the Isis Unveiled that I had skipped right over in my study. And in the beginning of Isis Unveiled, HPB quotes Plato. And Plato says that if we did not have a knowledge of that impermeability within ourselves, we could not have entered into human form.
Well,
So
something to think.
but then as the as the secret doctrine indicated in the story of Prometheus to Epimetheus, is that when, as Prometheans, with that knowledge of the absolute, we entered into the matter and immediately got absorbed by it, by the titans of the lower nature, by the forces of the cosmos that were mentioned in the secret doctrine quote. And so that seems to be the water that Tagore says we have to enter into if we're going to cross the sea. We have to enter into it. We have to get lost in it. And then we have to find ourselves from within that. And then we once we find ourselves, then we can begin that journey back to that sacred seat, to that knowledge that we had at the very beginning.
That gives us something to think about. I mean, some of these
You know,
ideas are very mysterious and very deep, and it's not going to take us one lifetime to figure them out for sure.
well, for most of my lifetime, I read The Voice of the Silence as just a lovely prose.
Mm.
It wasn't until later in life, after we were going through so much suffering, same thing with The Light on the Path. It is, we go through the suffering and then we look at these books and we go, oh, it has something. I'm supposed to do something with this suffering that I'm experiencing. But it seems that, this is where the books are not enough. We need, as HPB said, the knowledge of evil if we are going to see the good, and it's kind of like with Buddha when he had to leave his parents' home and go out and see the suffering around him. And then the words begin to take on meaning and value, that we need that contrast.
There's another thing about
Um,
suffering too. We don't ask why until we suffer,
yeah.
and I think, at least that's been my experience. I guess we could ask why if we're having a great time, but I don't think it would necessarily be as profound until we really suffer and we reach for a rationale for all of it, for any of it. why any of it, you know? And I think that's where suffering takes us out of the realm of complacency and into the realm of not just curiosity, but a deep search.
Yeah.
So suffering is definitely, even if we look at it as pleasure, as we often do, as vexations, but there's something to be said for that, being able to experience the opposites. So they have their place as long as we can keep from getting too attached to one or the other. Do we have any questions out there or comments out in the audience?
Has her
Oh,
hand up.
Shobha, I see you. I see you, Shobha. You're muted.
Of course. Sorry about that. Laura, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. It was just so inspiring. You know, I'm looking at the word impermeable, and in Spanish, impermeable means raincoat, and which prevents the rain from coming in, right? What a beautiful word. And that's what it is. Whether, you know, you talked about, Desiree, you mentioned that suffering makes us more willing to understand more, makes all our devotional texts clearer, and you mentioned it too, Laura. But it's very interesting. There was a poet in India called Surdas who said that we think of pain, we think of God when we have pain, but we don't think of God when we don't have pain. If we thought of God when we had pain, when we have joy, why would we have pain? How beautiful, again, you know, which brings us to viraga here again. I can't help but think about it. You know, that quality of, it comes in invulnerability, it comes in impermeability, because it's like, it doesn't matter what it is, rain or snow or whatever, that raincoat protects you, right?
Yes.
So that whatever hits you, you take it, because if we let joy make us forget that we are part of the impermeable, right? We ourselves are impermeable. How can we ever reach the absolute?
You know, looking at the story of Buddha under the tree, where he was assailed by all the same things that we're assailed with, you know, of the temporary world. The arrows were all aimed at him, but he did not lose his focus, you know, and that, so then it takes us back to that Hermes, that changing the polarity of our vestures, you know, that he was able to do that. So then the vestures, as the secret doctrine pointed out in the story of the Greek story, is that the vestures are no longer used by the senses for gratification at all. The vestures become impermeable to the need for sensuous life. And so, you know, when Buddha is sitting under that tree, he's impervious to that sensuous life. His vestures are now being used by the higher self. And as the Om Tat Sat points out, you know, that he's removed all the obstacles. So now the light of the Om can shine through in compassion for all around him. And so we see that the posture of service is really important to the posture of concentration of the mind, you know, and the understanding of unity, how all three have to go together. So karma then becomes our friend, because that as the karmic events come towards us and we experience the disappointment, the anger, the irritations that the karmic event bring to us, those are opportunities to remove those obstacles. So in creating these new vestures, changing the polarity of the vestures, we almost have to, we have to go deeper into the matter, don't we? We have to embrace those disappointments, those angers, those frustrations. We have to learn to understand them. What's the cause of them? Where are they coming from? And then we have to remove that cause and replace it, as Mr. Judge says, because you can't remove something without replacing it. So you have to replace it. What do we replace it with? Unity, compassion, and a recognition of the higher self, or devotion, as the Bhagavad Gita said, to the higher self.
One thing really gave me hope. I know we're in a struggling world right now.
No, yes.
It was a comment, or what Crosby wrote about acting. Let's see, was incapable of a selfish act, being incapable of a selfish act. And that gave me hope.
Yes.
Because as hard as it is for me, if I can perceive others as being capable and actually will at some point act without a selfish, be able to act without a selfish thought. And I know that's in the future for all of us. It gives me hope. And it actually kind of alleviates a lot of stress when I remind myself of this. That all of us
We've
are
got a
on
lot of,
that.
yeah, it removes a lot of stress to remember that we've got lots of time here, folks. We've got about another over 400,000 more years of Kali Yuga. So, we do have some time to work on this. And it's as Mr. Wadia said, pay attention to what the Maya that is coming before you, that we need to, that it has its cause in that spiritual principle, which I thought was rather interesting. So, the subjective objective becomes one. And so that the objective world, instead of being an illusion, it becomes a reflection. So if what we see in the outer world is not in harmony with the self of all, then we have some work to do and some adjustments to make. And when we look at our humanity today, and as you brought up, the difficulties, the turmoil that's taking place, what is so beautiful and so hopeful is that you see people are making those adjustments.
Mhm.
They are embracing the immigrants, embracing the diversity, and they're expressing that. So they're letting go of the false ideas. And that is hopeful, but there's always work to do, because these cyclic compression and return, it's all going to return again. Whatever we accomplish, there's still much more work to do. So we always have these downward cycles, and I think they're very instructive and helpful. But oh my gosh, the pain and the suffering.
And I think too we have downward cycles even within the Kali Yuga. We have, the Kali Yuga has probably the other seasons within it. And if you get into a season that's like a triple Kali Yuga,
Yes.
you're going to have a lot more energy compressed, and that puts a lot of stress on the sun. I mean, there's a sun Earth connection, moon connection, and energies that probably someone else would be much more capable of explaining, but I do see that there is a kind of a release and compression going on with energy as well. So it's um,
And the wisdom religion is ever there for us to fall back on. It's always there throughout all these cycles. It's this wisdom religion of theosophy, whatever name we give it, never goes out of existence. It's always been there in all these dark times.
well, the law itself is impermeable. So
Yes, there we go. Thank you, Desiree.
I haven't checked with the folks in the lodge to see if anyone out there is waiting to chime in with a question or comment. Here we have Jonathan.
Sure. So I wonder if you guys could comment on what Judge is meaning by this phrase, the culture of concentration, and the relationship towards the end of it's a two-part article. And at the end of the first part, it talks about the formation of an inner body. And also I've heard that the culture of concentration is another word for Raja Yoga, by the way. But anyway, it talks at the end of the first installment of the article, because it comes in two parts. It talks about the like an ethereal form, or like an inner body or something that's being formed. And at first it's kind of incoherent, but it becomes more coherent as things go along. I was wondering if either of you had anything to say about that. And because it reminded me of this idea of the reversal of the polarity of the Vesters.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. It brings to mind as well the becoming constitutionally incapable of a selfish act. So, what do we know of that inner life? It's spoken of in the in 5 years of theosophy as well, in the elixir of life, that we are building a permanent astral. But every time we lose control of our animal nature and our emotional nature, it has an effect on that permanent astral, which is a good thing because we definitely don't want a permanent astral that is not pure. So it seems to indicate that by living the higher life, by purifying our mind and our heart, and to purify the heart means unity, it means non-separateness, it means seeing all beings as yourself. That's what brings about the purity of the heart. The purity of the mind is the banishing of all selfish thought out of the mind, and then the performing of actions. And all of that, as Mr. Judge indicates, is changing the inner body, the inner life. And as he pointed out in the quote there that I gave, is that don't worry about that. Those changes are happening. You're not going to see them. You don't have to be conscious of them. You just have to keep working on your duty, living the higher life every day. And those changes are taking place on your inner nature. And he says that they will manifest, if not in this incarnation, in an incarnation in the future. So again, as Desiree said, that gives us hope. We don't have to do it all at once. And we don't even have to be aware of it. We just have to keep on with doing the duties to the highest that we are at any time capable of.
Yeah, stop trying to make stock and measure of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is also I think a lesson too for us, for even in meditation, I could probably, especially in meditation, to not try to look back on whatever it is we're doing.
That's
Try
right.
to stay very focused. And I get it. It's hard for people who've been doing it for a long time to do.
Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, it gives us hope to know that no stress on anybody. Just
Well, it always has truly been amazing to me that how the we've been given these wonderful ideas, and we are told to share them as best we can before we even really understand them ourselves. You know, that has always been a puzzle to me, that the great teachers come, they share these ideas with us, and then they say, okay, you're on your own now, figure it out, you know. And so oftentimes we're having to share these ideas before we've really even understood them ourselves. And that has always been a puzzle to me, you
Well, I think
know.
the sharing of them helps us to understand them because
That's true. Yeah.
we're such a collective entity anyway that we rely on one another for feedback, for um, just for information in general. We're constantly communicating with each other, even when we're not noticeably, communicating with each other, because essentially these vehicles are transmitters and receivers. So that is what we do. It's
We
just a
we
matter of
know.
having a good transmitter and a good
That's
receiver.
right. That's right. And how much we depend on the scriptures and the books. That I don't think the great teachers are going around thinking about um, living the higher life or what the paramitas are, that they have become these things themselves. They have become it. We have not become it yet, so we still rely on the books, until we, as Shakespeare shows in his play, The Tempest, until we can make these ideas our own, we're going to need to have the book. We're going to need to have the symbols, the words. But once the magician has done the work, and as Jonathan pointed out, in that creating that inner body, then Prospero was able to leave the island. He left the book behind. He threw his magic staff down into the bottom of the ocean after breaking it, and he set Caliban free. That is all symbolizing the fact that the inner body that Jonathan referred to has been perfected. But Lori has her hand up, I think. Desiree, can you see that? Yeah.
Sorry, I was mesmerized there for a minute.
No
Yeah.
worries. I had just noticed that somebody put a question in the chat a little while ago.
Oh, go to the chat, check it out. Let's see. Moreno. Okay.
There's one about paradox.
How can we best embrace paradox?
The only way that I've been able to understand and embrace paradox is to see it as something that forces us to move to a higher plane. If we're having a conflict, like even say, for instance, in our partnerships and our relationships with others, and there's a conflict there. And we look at the conflict and we see that both sides are absolutely right. When you listen to one side, they're absolutely right and they're what they see. And you look at the other side and they too have a good point. So how do you solve that paradox? You have to move to a higher plane, a more universal way of looking at the situation. You can't solve the paradox on the plane and where it originates in. You have to move to that higher plane. And so, like even with a couple, if you decide that love is the focus, so the conflict doesn't matter because you've moved to the higher plane of love. And so you choose the love rather than existing within the paradox of the conflict. Same thing with HPB's writings and the study of theosophy. It's full of paradoxes, that you have to move to a higher plane to solve it.
And I think there's a certain sincerity in the asking of the question,
Mm-hmm.
because simply to be curious is not enough. Someone, maybe it was my dad, I don't know, once said that you have to want truth even almost as much as you need to breathe.
Yes.
And that's different. It's not like just being curious about something. There has to be a real compulsion to know. And I think this is reflective of Brahma, that compulsion to know. It's reaching out to know itself. This is something you can't hold back. It is the universe expanding itself, and we are that expansion. So,
Yes.
um,
Beautifully said.
Yes.
So to solve the paradox then requires a sacrifice, a letting go of what we, as Tagore points out in his The King of the Dark Chamber, letting go of the limitation of our thinking and moving into something more universal.
I think we've,
does anyone have any more questions out there? I'm really happy. I feel hopeful. I feel
yeah,
energized.
Laura, that was a treasure of the talk.
So good. Thank you.
And Desiree, your dialectic and questions have been such a wonderful help.
Thank you,
thanks to both.
Desiree.
You're welcome. Oh, it was my pleasure.
And thank you, everyone here, too, because all the thoughts are not my own. They come from everyone in all the talks that have been given and all the devotion of all the students. It's not just me.
Yeah, the devotional field. The
Yes, it's a I love that. Devotional field. That's right. The new word that I learned, and I'm not sure if I'll say it right. The Sangha.
oh yeah, the Sangha.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sangha.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next week we will be speaking of the Sangha. Oh, how perfect. Talk about a segue. It'll be ULT Day, and various lodges will be doing different various things. Next week, for example, in the morning, the Universal Theosophy will be doing a collective ULT Day throughout the globe. And the San Diego Lodge will be doing our regular meeting, and it'll be ULT Day also. And I'll give you a little clue. One of the speakers who's going to be speaking in the Universal Theosophy presentation on Saturday morning will also be speaking in our presentation. So he'll be all warmed up by the time he gets to us. So,
Oh, okay.
so it's Wesley and Hal, by the way.
Very good.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you ever so much.
Yes, Laura, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of the evening. Hope to see you next week.
You will.
Thanks.
Bye
So
for
this
now.
is the 18th.
Thank you. Great, Laura. Thank you so much. Namaste, all. Everybody.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Bye bye.